Computer. Okay, there we go. Well, we'll go ahead and get started now. Welcome, everybody. My name is Brian, and my friend over here to my side is Brian as well. This is Civil Chat. If you haven't been to Civil Chat before, welcome. If you have, welcome back. If you're not familiar with Civil Chat, this is your chance to ask questions about Civil 3D, Recap, InfraWorks, Map 3D, AutoCAD, pretty much anything civil engineering related with Autodesk software. Nothing's off limits. I might not know the answer, but maybe somebody else on the call does know the answer, and then we'll be able to wrangle them in to answer for us. The way this works is you ask questions, and we do our best to answer them. If you don't ask questions, we're gonna just sit around and chat for an hour or so, I suppose. Brian was showing me how to do fireworks on an iPhone with a message, which was really pretty cool. Love that. If you don't know how to do that, you should look it up. So make sure you put your questions in the Q&A. If you just put them in the chat, there's a chance that we will miss them. But if they're in the Q&A, then we can make sure that we address them. Use the chat for sure. You can use it to talk about things I'm talking about, mention something, ridicule me, whatever it is you'd like to do.
Corrections are always accepted.
Oh, yeah, I love corrections. I love finding out that I'm wrong because then I can stop being wrong. So with that, I always like to start off with just talking about something. So let me go ahead and share my screen here. Let's see, screen 3, share. All right, so you should be able to see my Civil 3D here. And what I wanted to talk about to start off with is the concept of modeling phases. I don't know if I've ever talked about this in Civil Chat before.
I don't think you have.
So there's the idea of phases. When you're constructing something, you build this part first and then you build this part, right? So that's construction phases. This is similar, but this is modeling phases. So what I've got is I've got a draw running through here, and I want to put basically like a dam in here. Now the dam, every good dam needs a spillway, and so we're just going to create a weir in the top of this dam for this spillway. Now, if you're going to try to model this all at once, that can be pretty tricky. And so what we can do is we can use phases for our modeling. Now, this is not construction phases. This isn't how it's going to be built, but this is how we're going to model it. So the surface we see here is my existing ground. Let me set a decent scale here. There we go, that's better. And I've got a line that's going across. As you can see, it hits this contour over here, and then it hits the same contour over here. So this polyline is level, and this is going to be like the top of the dam. So I'm going to go ahead and make this into a feature line. Create feature line from objects. And needs to go into a site. Right, so I'm going to create a brand new site here. If you're not familiar with sites, please never, under any circumstance, should you ever use site 1, with one exception. The only time you should ever use site 1 is why you're showing people why you shouldn't use site 1. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and create a brand new site here. And this is just the dam. This has no spillway or weir in it at all. This is just the embankment. So I'm going to call this embankment. This is the embankment site. All right, go ahead and select OK. Everything looks good. I don't need to assign elevations because it already has the correct elevation assigned to it. And so now I have my feature line, and I'm just going to do a really simple grading. So we'll go to the Home tab, grading creation tools, and I'm just going to grade this to the outside down at 4:1, and then to the inside I'm going to grade it in at 10%, down at 2%, and then down to the ground at 4:1. So it's pretty simple stuff. So I'm going to grade to distance, and then we'll create the grading. Oh, I need to create my grading group first, my bad. So we'll go into our sites, embankment. I always like to create my grading groups directly under the site. There is an option up here to create a grading group, but it does not give you the option of which site this grading group goes into. Because of that, I don't like to use this command. Instead, I like to go directly to my site and create the grading group there. Right, so we'll call this one embankment. GG, I like to add GG onto the end of my grading groups because I often will have it create a surface automatically for me. And this way, anytime I see a surface that ends with GG, I know that surface came from a grading group. As you can see, it has the use the group name. So let's see, that's a good style. Go ahead and select OK. We'll set the target surface of the existing ground, and then we will grade to distance. Interesting. Wonder why it's doing that. Close out of that and bring that back up, see if it fixes it. There we go. All right, so I'm going to grade to distance, grab the feature line, go to the inside, apply to the entire length. Yes, I'm going to go 10 feet at a grade of -2%. And then I'm going to grade to the surface. Let's see, surface at slope. Oops, that's not what I wanted. I'll turn my selection cycling off. This is so annoying. I was showing that to somebody the other day. By the entire length, cut will be, we'll just go at 3:1, which is the default. And we'll do the same thing on the other side. So I've got my embankment here. Right? It's just a really simple embankment. And now what I want to do is I want to put a weir in here. Now, basically, the way I want to think about this is I want to, think about it as like I have this whole embankment built out. Now I want to drive a backhoe down along the top of this embankment and just dig out a weir. Right? If I were to try to do that within the grading group itself, that would be like extremely difficult to do. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to use this embankment as the phase 1 modeling surface for the phase 2 design. And so you can think of this embankment as the existing ground for my weir or my spillway design. And so I'm going to come in here and I'm going to draw in my weir. So this is going to be where my weir goes. I'm going to go from here, say to here. And I'm just eyeballing this stuff. And so I'm going to eventually turn this into a feature line. And this feature line is going to show the profile of the weir. So I'm going to go feature line, create feature line from objects. This needs to be in a separate site because I don't want it to interact with the embankment. I'm trying to edit the embankment because remember, I'm using the embankment as the basis for the design of this weir. So I'm going to go create a brand new site here, and we'll call this one weir. All right, again, everything looks good. I don't need to assign elevations here. I'm going to go ahead and create my grading group. And this will be the weir grading group. And I will set my target surface to be the embankment grading group surface. All right, so I've got this polyline here, or this feature line. So basically what I wanted to do is I wanted to start where it is, and I just wanted to go down 2.5 feet over and then back up 2.5 feet. So this is going to be 2.5 feet deep, a spillway. All right, so I'm just going to go ahead and insert some elevation points here. So I'll insert an elevation point. I'm just going to eyeball this. You really should do this a little bit more exact. So I'll insert an elevation point. I don't know, about there. And it's 5160, what, 2.5? Yeah, 0.3. There we go. Now we'll go 61.3. And I'll do the same thing over here. 5161.3. All right, and so now I have a feature line. All right, it starts here, goes down, and then it comes back up. All right. That's not right. 161.3. There we go. That's better. And now I'm going to take this feature line. I'm simply going to grade it out both directions, level until it hits that embankment. All right, so I'm going to go into my grading creation tools again. All right, and I'm going to do a surface at grade this time. Start with that feature line. I'll go to this side and apply it an entire length. Yes, my grade is going to be 0%. I just wanted to go straight out. Oops, I guess it didn't matter. And we'll go 0 and 0, and it grades out. And now I have my spillway. Well, not to look similar. I'm going to go to my object viewer. All right, and so there is my spillway. And now I simply combine these two surfaces together in a third surface. All right, so I'll go and create a brand new surface here. We'll call this one embankment final. and then we will paste in those two surfaces. We'll paste our surfaces. I'm going to do the embankment first, and then I will paste in the weir. So now I have my final surface that is a combination of the two surfaces. So again, I used so I modeled it in phases. Like I said, this isn't how it's necessarily going to be built, but this is how I modeled it. Another example you can think of is I've got a pond, and this pond needs a ramp access going down into the pond. How do I model the pond with the ramp access? I don't know, but I know how to model a pond, and I know how to model a ramp access. I model those separately, but I use the pond as the existing ground again for the ramp.
So have you had to show this at all for like construction phasing where, hey, here's the area we're going to come in and demo, and then here's the area we're going to come in and fill or whatever else?
No, not for this type of work. So again, this has nothing to do with build order. This is how you model it.
Got it.
Now, obviously, we do have to do phasing for construction documents, but that's not what this is for. This is, I can't figure out how to model this all together as one piece, so break it down into simpler pieces, and then use the previous models as the basis for the next pieces of the model. And then once you get all those pieces done, you can then combine them all together.
And then Adam had a comment to that saying, I typically create a grading target surface for each of the model phases so that if I need to model over the edge of the previous grading group, I can do that more easily without breaking the current grading group.
Yeah, that's a great example, Adam. So for example, if this particular phase of the model, of the weir in this example, it doesn't make sense for this example, but let's say we were doing a pond with a ramp, right? Maybe we needed to put a road that came up to the top of this dam up along the side. Well, the road is going to start over here in the existing ground, and then it's going to travel over the embankment and then up to the top. So you would create a target surface, like Adam was saying, that you paste in the existing ground and then paste in the embankment. And then you would use that again as the existing ground or the basis of the design for the access road. So yeah, absolutely, Adam. So, all right.
Thomas had in the questions something also talking about some of the phasing. It says phasing in different contour intervals. Sometimes we have 1 foot contours on ball fields and 0.5 foot contours for restrooms and parking access. This might be tasty.
So you want to see the surfaces we're using different contour intervals for different parts of the project. Is that what I'm getting, Thomas? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So let's say, and I'm just going to draw something in here. This is a great question. For whatever reason, I need to see 0.2 foot contours within this area. And then outside of it, I just want to see 1 foot contours. And so what we can do is we can use a combination of pasted surfaces and yeah. Okay, so what I'm going to do is this surface right now is a data reference, right? So it's being data referenced into this drawing. You can see it actually is a data reference because I get the option to synchronize and open source, etc. I can't make any changes to this. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to give it a style that doesn't display or freeze it or something along those lines, because I'm not actually going to be using this surface for my display. Instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create 2 new surfaces, right? We'll create a new surface and I'll call it this one outer, and I'm going to give this a 1 foot and 5 foot contour style. And then I'm going to create another one called inner. And I don't have a style for 1 foot and 5 foot, so let me go create one, or for the, what did I say, 0.2 feet? Something like that. Anyways, I'll call this 0.2 feet. And under our contour intervals, we'll set this to 0.2 feet. Actually, I wanted to copy that. I didn't actually finish, did I? Enter. I wanted to survey. I wanted to copy. There we go. We'll call this 0.2 feet. And then on the contours, we'll change that interval to 0.2. All right, so I've got my two surfaces, and now I'm just going to paste that existing ground into these two surfaces. So I'll do it to both the inner and the outer. So I'll paste to the surface, the existing ground into the outer. So, or this is the inner, so you can see it's nice and tight. And then I'll do the same thing for the outer. Edits, there it is. Paste existing ground as well. I'm now going to take this boundary and apply it to the inner surface. So I'll come up here to the inner surface. I'll apply this as a boundary. This will be an outer boundary. And I'll apply that polyline there as the outer boundary. So now you can see outside of it, I have just the 1 foot contours. Inside of it, I have the 0.2 foot contours and the 1 foot contours, but I don't want the 1 foot contours. Let's go ahead and change this style just to make it easier to see what's going on here. Let's assign this a design style. Actually, I should be doing it. Anyway, this will work. Design 1 and 5, there we go. All right, so you can see we still have those purple contours running and green contours running through here. I don't want those running through this area. Now, something that's kind of cool is you can use one surface as a hide boundary for another surface. So my outer surface, I'm going to apply a boundary. This is going to be a hide boundary because I want to hide the contours within here. And when you're doing a hide boundary, you'll notice you have an option for surface. So I choose surface. I'm going to select the surface from the drawing. And now you can see I don't have the proposed contours being displayed inside these existing contours. So did that get you what you wanted, Thomas?
He's already said knew the team would have a solution.
Okay. And the beautiful thing about this is if I make a change to this border, everything just updates. Because the border is a boundary in the one surface, and then the surface is a boundary in the other surface. Right?
And of course, since they're all data reference, if you change the surface, etc., they all update.
Exactly. Yep. So you can do this for different contour intervals. Start coming your way. Nice. You can do this for different contour intervals, different display styles. You could have, proposed on the inside, existing on the outside. I need user-defined contours just within this one area. All sorts of different options here. So that was a great question, Thomas.
Yep, I liked it. I learned.
Hey, Brian's here. Hey, Brian, how's it going?
Going well, going well.
Oh, I did not see him sneak in.
Yeah, I raised my hand. I wanted to throw a bit of a word of caution on this.
Okay.
Where to begin? Okay, so just yeah. Okay, so
Haley, you done messed up big time.
Yeah, so I want to bring forth the whole just because you can doesn't mean you should. AutoCAD gives you the ability to do almost everything and anything. Recommendations, and we've had this exact situation is I'll actually create two separate drawings, one for my for the contour intervals that I need, and data reference it into both. What that does is if you have an individual that's putting together plan sets that does not have Civil 3D capability, they can't do this. They won't be able to data reference and or snip or play with stuff like that. And we're in our organization, not everybody has Civil 3D, and it's one of those things. Another item is when you data reference in surfaces, it'll start making your drawing larger. For us, we don't do any data references into sheets. We had a project where we had everything data referenced in, and then we had a similar project where we Xrefs in the data referenced items. So we would create a separate drawing that was just the data reference of the entity that we needed. Or if I had an alignment and I data referenced in the surface to show in my alignment, I would just Xref that alignment into my drawing and then label it through that. And it significantly decreases the time, the opening time, the saving time, especially if you are working from a satellite location where the server is not right behind you or on your computer.
Interesting.
So just something to consider. I love what you've shown. This is perfect. But if you are in an organization that has AutoCAD users, this will.
Well,
Hey, Thomas,
that sounds like a
you're
CAD
chatting.
manager issue. You need to buy more Civil 3D licenses. I'm just saying.
Hey, Thomas, you're chatting in the Q&A and nobody else can see it now. Just wanted to throw that out real quick, Thomas.
So I just like to throw that out there because yeah, we've experienced items, and it's just things I want to want people to be aware of. Because every time you make a surface, even though you're making a copy and pasting it in, what makes it large is the display of the surface, or the type of the display that you're adding to it. And so if you're concerned about size, and this looks relatively small, but when we're talking multiple miles of survey, sometimes that gets a little funky.
So let me, I'm really curious about this. So let me restate it so I make sure that I understand. So if you're, instead of data referencing a surface or an alignment into another drawing for your sheets,
yeah,
you're data referencing them into a different drawing.
Yep.
That is just that object.
Yep.
And then Xrefing that into the sheets.
Yes, and I did see the little comment about the methodology in which you bring the surface in is either you're storing the geometry or it's just there for reference. It won't matter because whenever you open the drawing, the way CAD looks or Civil 3D looks when it's opening a drawing, it goes through Xrefs, it verifies the Xrefs, it goes through data references, and it has to synchronize the data references as well. And
interesting.
If you are data referencing in a very large surface that is several hundred megs, that has an MMS file, every instance that it's data referenced in, it will go through and open that to synchronize it. And let's say you have an alignment in this drawing that you also have the existing surface or a proposed surface and a profile. And you data reference in the alignment, you data reference in the profile, you data reference in the finished grade and the proposed and the existing grade, and into a sheet file. When you open that sheet file, it will open this drawing, which has all 4 items in it. It'll open it 4 separate times because it's a computer. It systematically goes through. It says, oh, hey, I need to check this EG data reference. I'm going to go and synchronize and open this drawing. Okay, next on the list, oh, the FG. I'm going to go right back to the same drawing. So if you're working via satellite and you got bandwidth issues, this will definitely decrease the amount of time, increase the amount of time it takes to open that file, because if this is a 50 meg file, it's opening it 4 times and you're pulling 200 megs across.
Interesting.
That's something to consider.
That's fascinating. I've never thought about that, but it totally makes a lot of sense.
Well, I had a project that was set up by another company. I don't want to mention the name, and they had everything data referenced in. And that thing, to this day, even it's on the server in our room, it takes 40 minutes to open a drawing, and that's because the stuff was data referenced in, and then the profile was cut using the alignment that was data referenced. And man, it's just ugh.
Wow, that's a whole new way of thinking about things for me.
But yeah, it is.
I've always been of the data reference things into the sheets, data reference things into the sheet, data reference things into the sheets.
Yeah,
but what you're saying is making a lot of sense.
Yeah, what we can we can also cough when we see that. Thanks, Paul. Yeah. Since then it was one of the earlier to 2018, 2019 projects, and so we've learned from our mistakes. But yes, it's just fascinating how much time was saved on doing that. And also it does open it up to basic AutoCAD users to be able to put together plan sets without having to do any data referencing,
right?
Because you can label through the Xref.
Right.
Oh yeah.
So that's it. So in the Q&A, Corey brought up a point. Says that he's had bad results with labeling Xref Civil 3D data. If Xrefs are accidentally unloaded or detached and saved, all labeling
Well,
is lost, which is
unloading.
valid.
No, well, okay. I've never had an issue with unloading. We can leave it unloaded. If you unload it, all the labels go away.
Mhm.
If the Xref gets renamed by accident, so this won't happen with a data reference. If the data reference gets deleted and removed, or you change, you could definitely redirect the data path. But with an Xref, you can actually change the name of the drawing and just relink it, and all the labels come back just fine. And additionally, whenever you select, if you're doing like a spot elevation and you've got multiple Xrefs in there and each one of them has a different surface, you can still choose between which Xref surface you want to set your
Right.
label to.
So
Just
one thing, as far as Xrefs and labels go, um, especially for like existing surfaces that are going to be referenced into a whole bunch of drawings.
Mhm.
One thing that I've told people is, very similar to what you had said, create a drawing that is just the surface and
Uh-huh.
label it,
Yep.
and then Xref that into your drawings, and then the labels just come through. And if you need to add additional labels, you can just label the Xref directly.
100%. That's exactly what we do.
And you can do the same thing with alignments.
Uh-huh. Just
Right?
can't do
So
it in
you can
profile.
have the labels already on the alignment, but if you need different labels on this alignment in this drawing, freeze the Xref labels and then label it yourself however you need.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep. And that works so beautifully. The only place that we do our labeling 100% in the file that it's generated in is our profile views. But hey, it's a profile view. That's all you got there. That's all you need.
Right.
So
So you do the same thing with your profile views then.
profile, yeah,
It
with our
makes sense because you're not data referencing stuff into the sheet
exactly.
drawing.
Yeah, we're just Xrefing it straight in. So the profile view is just a viewport of that profile view. That's it.
Right.
No additional labels, no nothing. We're pretty stringent about not labeling in sheet view.
Right.
But so
Yeah.
Whole lot of conversations going on.
Yeah.
Adam was saying how the settings for um, being able to have it only reference the surface versus the geometry for data reference. Um, a lot of people said that what you guys and Thomas were talking about is a little bit harder when you're talking route projects as opposed to just site projects.
What kind of projects? Route?
Route. So like a pipeline or a long road or something like that.
Oh, see, I did a 3.5 mile, 36-inch raw reclaimed water and was reclaimed force main, water main. Yeah, and it was 3.5 miles. And that sucker opens in 45 seconds off of ACC, and everything is XREF, no data referenced, kind of a scenario. So
That's I'm definitely gonna have to be looking into this one. I have a feeling that I'm gonna be excuse me, doing some training videos for our company here pretty soon on this.
yeah,
All
somebody's got a
right.
7 mile channel. Yeah, all XREF. XREFs are still awesome.
Excuse me. Yeah. Awesome. Thanks, Brian. That was a great topic. Um, yeah.
So Paul did post a question in the chat right at the beginning, so I'll go ahead and ask that one. Some of our bigger clients are starting to ask more and more frequently if our civil site teams will ever be able to work in Revit. Are you guys hearing the same issues?
What?
I've been hearing people ask that since Civil 3D
Yeah.
came out and Revit came out.
Matter of
Yeah.
fact, I went in and got training on Revit, and so now I fully deal all of my pump stations, everything within 5 foot of the structure. I do all in Revit, and then we're actually looking at exporting with Autodesk the IFCs of our pipes out, so that way they can be go across from Revit to Civil 3D in a little bit better fashion, so we can at least tie in. But
Right.
Well, I haven't looked lately, and I know Haley, when you and I were used to work together, a decade ago, that as long as you export it out to CAD, you could actually tell it to export out those pipe networks. And then in Revit, when we linked that CAD file in, it was a 3D CAD file, we could see that information.
yeah, I'll
Yeah.
just warn you about the IFC export out of CAD into Revit. You see all the triangles on the piping. It looks gross,
Yeah.
but it's there. We're
But so Thomasy, you did that because Haley and I did this before, where he took an entire pipe network and he would say, okay, let me export to AutoCAD out of Civil 3D, and then he would make it a 3D CAD file that said, give me the tin surface, give me the pipe networks, etc. And I could bring that 3D DWG into Revit just fine.
Yeah. In Revit, can you bring in a Navisworks file? Can you like link in a Navisworks file?
You can link in a coordination file, which is great to visualize it, but it doesn't like export to PDF. You can't. It's there to see on the screen, but it's kind of shit if you try doing anything else with it.
Gotcha.
Like, cool, I want to print a 3D PDF, doesn't show up. Cool, I want to see this in any sort of rendering program. That stuff doesn't show up.
Gotcha. Okay.
Paul's saying that if you do that, the round pipes don't show up in Revit. I know I've seen round pipes from Civil 3D in Revit.
Yeah, well, I mean, they're sort of round. It depends on what is it? The max sort set to? If you got, I set mine to like 5,000. They don't look round. They look kind of funky, but they're not like the ones I've saw were not square. But yeah.
Well, I mean, computers in general can't do round. And all of our arcs and everything are all approximated.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you're looking at max sort command, it actually gives what the tessellation is along a circular. It also it appears to apply to the pipes whenever we're exporting out of IFC.
It's all triangles. The
Yeah,
one thing I will say,
I know, man, it's all.
the one thing I'll also say to Paul is the one thing I always try to tell my civil engineers is don't give me the damn contours. I want a tin surface.
Are you sure max sort is the right one, Brian?
I'm not a civil 3D person. I'm a Revit person, but I want the tin surface because you're generating your contours off of your points, which is what the tin surface is. And so that's what I always like to say, that's a translation. And then Revit's taking your contours, translating those into points to generate its own contours and surface. So we got like this double translation. It's like I always say, it's like trying to say I'm translating English to German to Japanese back to English. Shit's gonna get lost.
Yeah. And as far as you're correct, Brian. And then Mr. Haley, I can't confirm the max sort. I know that there's a particular command in there that gives you a higher resolution on the IFC export. Max sort's more of a CAD command.
Yeah, I don't think it's max sort. I know there's one for like, like when you show your
if there's flip faces
pipes and they're like angular, and you can set the variable for that, but I don't remember what that one is either. Might be something similar to that.
And I agree with Adam. I agree with Adam on there. Flip faces, somebody needs to be face left.
Yeah.
Put in proximity break lines, people. Put in proximity break lines when you can.
Right. Everything from move point up under the edits, just don't do.
Yeah, please.
God, yes. Just stop.
Well,
it's so annoying when I get into a surface and I see delete points. I'm like, no, just get the data right.
Well, the thing is most people don't realize that, yes, you can do that, but you're never able to go back and uncover what you did.
Exactly.
So there's no breadcrumb to leave. And it's like, and if you flip the face once and you're like, nah, that didn't work back, and you flip it again, it keeps that. It stores that as a registry. And then guess what? Every time you open that drawing, it's got to go through that entire 25,000 list to rebuild the surface. And you run the risk of crashing.
I saw a survey for existing ground surface. It wasn't a huge project. I'd probably say it was probably 30 acres.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have a single break line. It was all swapping edges.
Oh my God, poor thing.
It was back in the land desktop days. But
okay,
still,
so Sid says
same concept.
The view res is for the IFC.
Okay.
I was gonna say Sid said view res is the command you're looking for IFC.
There's so many gosh darn variables. Oh, I just had to write in to disable the audit control so that way it doesn't create an audit file every time I do an audit on my drawings.
Audit control?
Yeah, audit CTL. If you set that to 0, you will not create an audit log file.
I didn't even know the audit created log files.
So now my question is, I audit. That's all I do in CAD is audit and purge and things like that. To when I get them, where the hell are these log files, and how many do I have on my computer?
Yeah. Well, they should be right there with the DWG. So you may have yours turned off.
Well, that's good.
I think it's new for 23 and 24 going forward. I didn't see it in 22. Paul's saying the default should be 0. I don't know, man. When I installed mine, it preset it to it, and I never changed it to 1 because I didn't
Yeah,
know
I've
about
never
it. So,
touched mine. So we'll
yeah.
save this here. I'll do an
Autodesk
audit.
likes to sneak
Yes.
in new stuff every release.
And let's go find that.
So now I got to go onto the Autodesk Construction Cloud for all my clients who have me clean up CAD files that they're bringing into Revit
Right.
and see if I have, see how many of those I have.
I think Paul.
There it is, an ADT file.
Yep. It starts
Shit.
jumping them. Yep, it'll junk it up, bro.
Paul just says his CAD team's better than you guys because they
Apparently
caught his
so.
is 0.
There's so much
Wow.
good information here, though.
CAD IT team. You have a CAD IT? I just have IT. I'm the CAD IT.
Right? Wow. Oh, no, that's definitely going in our ACAD doc.lsp for sure.
Yeah. I just put it in over the weekend. I'm off. Screw that.
So here's a drawing setup thing that I thought I was going to be really, really cool on in our ACAD doc.lsp. So for those of you that don't know, this is the list routine that gets run every time you open up a drawing. And so it's run for that drawing. So you open up the drawing, that list routine runs. So you can put commands in there. So, I want to do certain things to this drawing every time. So for example, maybe you always want your LT scale to be set to 1, your MSLT scale to be set to 1, your PSLT scale to be set to 1 for every single drawing ever. You can put that in the ACAD doc.lsp. And when you launch the drawing, if somebody else changed it, it will set it back for you. So that's an example. I don't know if I would do that, but that's an example. I got the smart idea of let's purge out the reg apps. I hate reg apps. They're just annoying. They're useless. So in the ACAD doc.lsp, I put in a little bit to purge out your reg apps. Only to later find out that if you purge reg apps, it breaks the QTO command.
Yep. I didn't know you had quantity takeoffs linked. Nice job.
Yeah. So So if you run, so for example, if I draw a line and then I go to analyze QTO manager and I went to assign, let's just do.
And while you're doing that, just back to the registry, the audit command. If I guess it seems to be random throughout because mine. I found. I guess if you see those AVT or these ADT files, then you know what the issue is.
Right.
I always thought those were some remnant architectural desktop commands. I don't know. That's what I thought they were.
ADT, nice. So I was just able to assign a pay item to this, no problem. Right. So if I do my takeoff now, all right, it shows up. Let's change it to do a different one. Let's do a summary. All right, so I got some pipe. Woo! So I'm gonna go ahead and erase this, draw it in again, and I'm gonna do a minus purge. And all I'm gonna do is purge the reg apps. Now, actually, I don't think I've tried this in 2024 yet. Enter the yes, no, I don't want to verify. And then if I right click on here, assign pay item, and then take off. No AutoCAD objects have pay item information assigned.
Bye-bye.
Wait, how did you only have 13 reg apps? Whenever I run that command on clients files from Civil 3D, it's in the thousands, if not hundreds of thousands.
Because this is a brand new drawing created from my template that I purged the reg apps out of.
Okay, just check. Yeah, Thomas is like, I just got 78,365 registered apps.
Yeah.
That's way more common, Thomas.
Yeah, our template has definitely devoid of that. I did want to say something to Greg. They said they received a survey that they don't use the brake lines. So they take the top back curb, jet across the center lines. Yep, and we definitely see that there's issues with that. I've had that happen myself. Some of the easiest things that I will do to help that along is I will use the 2D data, the lines that they give me for the curb and gutter, and I will add them to the surface as a proximity break line, so that way it doesn't really add any elevation value to the surface. It just gives it a proximity and breaks the triangle for you. So you don't have to go tediously through and doing the swapping of the edges, which I wouldn't recommend, but you could use their own line work to generate that.
Mm-hmm.
So hopefully that answers your question, Greg. And I'll read the full question since Brian summarized. It said, when I receive some surveys, I see that they don't use break lines, so the top back of curve will jet across the center of the road, and it makes it a lumpy mess. The swapping edge is a great idea, and obviously, no, this is better. And Greg's now asking, why not swap the edges?
Because they're evil. Sorry.
More to the point, Brian.
So the problem with swapping edges in any surface edit, so we're talking about these edits here. Again, anything from move point up, this is a direct manipulation of the surface. Now, the way I like to teach this is if you're working on a static surface, a surface that you know is never going to change, right? But let's assume the surface is never going to change. I would say that these edits are okay, right? Avoid them like a bad cold. If you're working on a design surface, a surface that's constantly changing, going through different iterations, avoid these like the goddamn plague.
Yeah.
Right? These will just make your life miserable because, like Brian had said earlier, there's no trace of what was done. There's no backstory to it, right? There's no log of what was done other than the fact that that edge was swapped.
Yeah.
Great. Where is it in my drawing? Well, here are the coordinates.
It'll zoom you to a location, but you really won't know what you're looking at. And then more to the point, Greg, also one more thing, and this is for everybody as well. If you do a surface edit and then you come back and you receive additional survey that may have that may have overlapped the area that you have done some surface edits on, it doesn't melt well back together again. Matter of fact, I've seen it where the surface edit, you can't get rid of the delete point or add point surface edit within the area that you're trying to replace. And so it keeps triangulating to that exact same location or based on the edit that you made. Yeah. And is it because you're altering the official survey? Oh, yeah. Be careful about that.
Yeah. You definitely need to be careful about that. So the original question is, hey, I got the surface that has all this, bad triangles in it. What should I do? Send it back to the surveyor and say, do you really want me to use this for my design? Because if I do, you're going to get sued.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
That's the best answer. Send it back at them. Hey, you just gave me something that you're liable for. You okay with that?
Point out the issues with it and say, hey, this is not how the curb and gutter actually looks. If I design using this, you're responsible for the existing ground.
Now,
if our design is based off that, that's a bad thing.
Now, here's
and they never hire them again.
Yeah. Now, here's a method that we've been using and with great success because it does a multitude of things. When we receive something from a survey, first off, we try to break it apart. So that way we have the surface by itself and then the 2D horizontal data by itself. But one thing we will do for the surfaces is we will use the survey surface. We'll either bring in the XML or use their surface file, but we will create a dummy surface. We'll call it, just for example, EG combined. And we will take the survey's surface and paste it into EG combined. And then we will use EG combined as what we data reference, because if we receive any additional survey or survey that's to replace the original survey, we can bring it in, pull the paste out of the dummy surface, EG combined, and just replace or paste over or make manipulations without altering the original data.
Yeah.
And
Tom and Paul both agree with that as well.
Yeah, this way you don't break any linkages of labeling that you had already established, any profiles, snapshots, or surface profiles that you've had, because you're using a surface that is your own, and you can claim to that.
And a little bit up in the chat, Tom also had a thing talking about creating feature lines from the planimetric line work to add to the surface. So there's a nice tip up there too. I don't know what the Brian's thoughts are that.
So there's a couple of things I wanted to kind of expand on a little bit. So Brian had mentioned proximity break lines, and I want to talk about what a proximity break line is in a little bit more detail. And then somebody else had mentioned the mid-ordinate distance, and they suggested using a 0.05 or less for curves. And I'd like to talk a little bit about that as well, because a lot of people don't understand what mid-ordinate distance is.
I use 0.01.
All right.
So yeah, I'm agreeing. So go for it.
Okay. And I disagree. I think that's a bit too small personally,
Okay.
but I'll explain what it is and why it is that I chose what I chose.
Yeah.
All right. So let's talk about mid-ordinate distance. So mid-ordinate distance has to deal with arcs, with curves. All right. So I've got this curve here. And what is the mid-ordinate distance of this curve? Well, the mid-ordinate distance is the distance from the middle of the curve. All right, so from the middle of the curve to the middle of the chord. So this here is the mid-ordinate distance of this curve. Now, last time I checked, a 10 is made up completely of triangles. There are no curves in a 10. In fact, it's a triangulated irregular network, and triangles are made up of 3 straight lines. And yes, I have had people argue this with me, but if you're not in a Cartesian coordinate system, but we are. Right. And so what we can do is we have to approximate this curve with straight line segments. And so we set a mid-ordinate distance for the curves. And so when it adds this curve to the surface, what it's going to do is it's going to start here at the very beginning, and it's going to string out until right here, that little curve segment has a mid-ordinate distance equal to or less than that value. For whatever value you put in. The default is 1, even in the metric template that ships with Civil 3D. So it's set to 1 meter, which is just insane. And then it does the same thing. It continues out, and then it puts the very last one in, and then it evenly distributes those points along that curve. And so instead of just getting 2 points or a gazillion points, you end up with a handful of points along this curve, right? And so that's what the mid-ordinate distance does. Now, what does it represent? What does the mid-ordinate distance value represent? Well, it represents the horizontal error of your 10 surface to the data, right? So assuming I use a mid-ordinate distance of 1 foot here, right? My data, this arc, let me go ahead and just make it red for now, so we can see it better, right? So the data is this red arc. My surface, which is made up of the triangles, which is this white line, horizontally can be off by a foot, by up to a foot, all right? And so if this is, I don't know, say curb and gutter, right? This represents the flow line of the curb and gutter, and over here is the lip, and over here is the back of curb. Well, flow line to back of curb for a lot of vertical curb and gutter is 6 inches. And so what you'll end up with is the flow line coming across the back of the curb and then back over to the flow line. And so if this separation between your data is less than a foot, then you're going to be off drastically here, right? And so what I've done is to determine the mid-ordinate distance that I use is I took a look at most civil engineering data, and I thought to myself, okay, what is the closest gap you'll see between any linear features that you use on a surface? And the best example I could come up with, or the tightest example, is flow line to top face of curb. And those are about 2 inches apart from each other, right? And so what I decided is I'm going to take that distance and I'm going to cut it in half. So I want it to be 1 inch, right? So which is 0.08333. How many threes are there again?
That's
I always forget, right? So that's close to 1/10 of a foot. So our default value for mid-ordinate distance, so if I come in here to add in a break lines, you can see ours is set to 1/10 of a foot. Because that's smaller than any gap that you will typically see on a typical civil engineering project. And it doesn't add an exorbitant amount of points to the surface, but it adds enough to get a good model. My opinion is you should never, under any circumstance, ever use a mid-ordinate distance greater than 0.1. Going smaller than 0.1, I have no problem with, but you'd never go greater than 0.1. And that's the reasoning I have behind it. Because that's
Adam says he
about
likes
an
point.
inch.
You just contradicted Adam. He said he likes 0.125. So
Yeah.
Now, my reasoning for going from 0.01 has to do with significant figures. The fact of the matter is, all of Northern Eastings, all our foot measurements are to the 100th of a foot, right? So to try to get our slopes, which are to at times, and I would just want to smack some PMs, they want it to the, but unbeknownst to them, they're wanting 2.38% slope. Well, that's really to the 1/10,000th of a foot, because that percent also moves that decimal place 2 more times over.
Right.
So you will never ever be able to get a true slope if you're measuring to 2 decimal places, but you're defining your angles, your slopes at 5 decimal places. Period. You will get confliction. So with the mid-ordinate distance, especially whenever we're trying to go around curves, and we only do this design work, we won't do this in existing, we'll bring it down to 0.01. And that's because of the least significant figure. But your
I hate to break it to you,
works
Brian.
just fine too. I'm
I
sorry.
hate to break it to you, but 0.1 and 0.01 have the same number of significant digits.
No, I understand. I'm talking.
No, I'm just giving you a hard time.
Oh my God! You just poked the bear. Stop it. I've just had an argument with an engineer that's like, I want my slopes to 2 decimal places, and I go, well, if you're putting the percent sign, you're actually doing it to 4. Where'd you get your degree at? Sorry. Like every mathematician just rolled over. That hurt.
Yeah. No, I'm just.
Yeah, you're right. It is.
And it goes back to a great saying that I heard when I was a young engineer. The surveyor came up to me and said, Brian, remember, design it to the 1,000th, stake it to the 100th, build it to the 10th.
Yep, there you go. Yep.
So, yeah.
So, and
then
to battle.
So we got just a couple minutes left. I did want to
sorry.
talk about the proximity break lines, just so people understand what it is. So let me go ahead and let me promote this surface. Actually, let me erase these surfaces just because they're annoying me. And we'll change. Oh, those are sites. I was like, well, where's my surface? Change that back to displaying contours. Actually, I'm going to do contours and triangles. We'll do this work. It's an editing one. Okay, so this will be perfect. To promote it, let me go ahead and promote it because I want to be able to change some data in here. All right, so if I have a 3D polyline, so I'm just going to draw a 3D polyline that goes from here, and we'll say goes to here. All right, so if I were to take this and add it to my surface as a standard break line, right, you can see what it does is it forces a triangle along that line, and it adds data at the vertices of the polyline. So you're changing the triangulation and you're adding data to the surface. You're adding new points to the surface. If I were to add this as a proximity break line, right, so I'm going to change this to proximity here, and I select that. What it's doing is it's not going to add this point to the surface as a break line. What it's going to do is it's going to pick the surface point that's closest to this point, which would be this point over here. And same thing with this one. It's going to pick the one that's closest to it, which is, I have no idea which one's closest, right? And then it's going to triangulate from this point down to this point, because those were the closest surface points within the proximity of the line. Hence the term proximity break line. And so back to the question about the bad survey data, but you have line work. So if you add that line work as proximity break lines, this is what you'll get. And I think it's a great way of doing things. You just got to be careful around curves. because proximity break lines don't have curves. It's just point to point to point to point. So you might want to make sure to add additional data points along those curves. But so I just wanted to touch on that real quick.
Well, and Brian, if you add that as a proximity break line with intermediate points to it, shouldn't it add those portions to it?
I don't know. Let's find out. I don't think that's an option.
Is that not an option? No,
yeah, it filters all that out.
So
it's
so
just whatever points you have in that on that front line gets added in, and then triangulates between them.
Yeah, and normally what we'll do is, if it's, especially if it's from a surveyor, we'll use their line work, which already has those points kind of in there for their curvature through.
Right, and most likely the line work that you're using is going to be lying on top of points.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, exactly. For sure.
Yeah, somebody was talking about the significant figure thing again. Yeah, we'll be ripping out sidewalks. You can do a search where you can actually force. It's a rounding function feature that we've written into an expression so that way it forces the slope to look at the two significant figures at a start and stop point, and then calculates the slope based on that. So your feature line will say 6.7, but the slope that is given in your label value will say 6.5.
Oh, nice. Okay. So you're getting rid of the 2 + 2 = 5 for very large values of 2 issue.
Yes, correct.
Right.
All right.
For those that don't understand what I'm saying, 2.4 + 2.4 = 4.8. Round each one of those to the nearest whole number. You got 2 + 2 = 5.
Yep. Yeah. If you have if you got 0.124, it'll round to 0.12. If you got 0.1245, it'll 1.125. It'll just round to 0.13.
Right.
Yep.
Yep. So that's what he's talking about. And I did want to comment on Jason. Jason put something up. Speaking of just because you can doesn't mean you should. Today there's a Civil 3D 2025.0.2 update that fixes a crash when exploding a surface that uses a style with points display. And then Jason continues on with, why would one ever need to explode a surface like that? Again, just because you can doesn't mean you should. Very great point, Jason.
Yeah.
All right. Well, for as few questions as we had, I think this was some really good discussion. I know I learned something new. I'm going to have to investigate using Xrefs instead of data references. I have a feeling that there will be some other folks in here that are doing the same. And with that, we will call it a day. So the video will be up on my YouTube channel probably later this afternoon or tomorrow. So if you want to come back and watch it again, you're welcome to. It's just going to be the recording. I don't do any editing to these things. It's just there if you want to take a look at it. But with that, we will call it adieu. Y'all have a happy 4th of July if you're in the US, and you take care. We'll see y'all next month.
Thanks, everyone.